Too much? Oh no. It's whatever about what we talked about. We want to know what a little bit. We tried grades matter. That was beyond. That is Pep Rally number 1. Hi, lovely people. Hi. We are very lucky to have the beautiful Sydney Meyer with us today. We're going to talk about something really interesting that I've always felt very connected to, and that I know you feel very connected to, and that's this idea that there is always a way.
Yeah.
Regardless how unconventional the path, regardless of what you have to do to get there, there's always a way. And that simple belief takes you a long way in life, and is very comforting. So, my lovely Sydney here is an incredible actress. And when was the first time you knew that? When was the first time you knew that you wanted to act?
Ooh.
Do you remember that?
I was like, yeah, I'm putting you on the spot. It's like, I developed an interest in acting. I went to a school for the arts when I was 9 years old for grade 4. Not because I had any interest in the arts. I just went there because I was being bullied at my elementary school, and I had to go somewhere else. So I went there. I auditioned. I got in. I went. And I was very academic, you know this about me, and we had to, from grade 4, like, put on Shakespearean plays and study Shakespeare. And I just, like, completely...
Grade 4, folks.
Grade 4. We were 9. So in grade 4, we did A Midsummer Night's Dream, and I played Hermia. And I just completely fell in love with the language. And so I remember being at that school and having that experience. I fell in love with Shakespeare. So I kind of wanted to be only a Shakespearean actress. I had this idea in my mind that was what I wanted to do. And, you know, my horizons were broadened a bit by a friend of mine who was an on-screen actress that I grew up with and had her own TV show, and kind of, like, opened that world up for me a bit. But I initially... at that school, fell in love with Shakespeare and was like, I want to go work at the Globe. This is what I want to do. And that is what kind of awoke that in me through those 5 years that I was at that school. That really grew in me, and I fell in love.
And I love that you said that, because it really is an awakening, and it really is like a moment where you just realize this is there's passion, a desire that is born. And what I love is that you didn't shut it down.
Yes, it was something that I had never experienced before, and I had never thought of in that way before, you know what I mean? But I had grown up watching Shakespeare, and I always knew I loved the language, but I remember the first time getting up and speaking a monologue, like just the way the words felt in my mouth, the way that felt to me, was this extraordinary experience that I was like, oh, this is something I love, like I want more of this, and I just kept exploring it, and I had wonderful supportive teachers that like bred that into me and kept supporting me, and it really grew.
Now, I think it's really interesting, this balance between self-motivation, when you know something, and having the support around you that pushes you in a certain direction. How do you manage to go in the direction that you feel in your heart without having, for example, a supportive environment around you with you know, if you didn't have the teachers that you had? What was the impact? Do you think that it was very important to be in that particular environment, or is there something about you and your personal passion that drove that idea forward of what you wanted to do and grounded you in it?
I think it's both. I think it's definitely both. I think I was incredibly lucky, absolutely. The adults I had around me in my youth were paramount to my experience and my growth, and they always treated me with respect and treated me like an adult and pushed me to be the best that I could and encouraged me, and that was incredibly important for me, and taught me what I was worth and what I was capable of, and to push myself, and self-discipline and time management, so many other things. So I'm incredibly grateful for that. But at the same time, I think, you know, I was always someone who was very in touch with my purpose, with what I believed in. I always had a strong moral core, and I knew that, like, if something didn't feel right in me, that I just wasn't going
to do it,
to entertain
to
it.
just do it.
I did. Yes, there was just no point. I was like, this doesn't feel right. This isn't comfortable. This isn't making me happy. So what is the point? So it was always finding a different avenue. I mean, even, I went to that school for the arts just because I wasn't happy at my other school, and I didn't know if that school for the arts was going to lead to anything that was going to be bigger for me, or anything more than just a different environment than what I was in. But I knew the environment I was in wasn't serving me, and I needed something else. So I just always listened to that in my gut and was like, this is not the place for me. I'm not happy here. I'm not thriving here. I'm going to find another place, whatever that is, wherever that is, however that is. And I think I always knew that I had to trust myself, and that no one was going to be as invested in myself and my growth as I was, or be as in touch with my feelings and my surroundings as I was, and I had to just honor that and follow that.
Where does this idea of there's always a way, how does that play into the courage that you had? Because I really honestly do think it takes a touch of madness and a bit of courage to sort of trust that, you can absolutely do anything that you set your mind to. Where did that come from for you? In this notion that there is always a way, that things always do kind of fall into place once you've made that decision of what you want,
I think part of it was an awareness of the big picture of my life and of my plans, and that whatever is right now, this is not permanent. Everything is transient. Everything's fluid, and if that's where I want to be, I can get there. And whatever's in the way is only temporary obstacles, right? And I think another big part of it for me was just educating myself. Reading about people that I looked up to that had made a big impact in the world, and these people took huge risks and did things that everyone around them thought was insane, and really pushed boundaries and just made it happen. And looking at that and saying yeah, it's possible, and if that's what I want to be and that's what I want to do in my life, I have to be willing to take those risks and see these things through, and know that there's always a way, and that I'm not going to make excuses for myself and set myself up for failure and say, well, I couldn't because of this, or I couldn't because of that. Because if there's a list as long as my arm of people who could, why can't I?
Yeah.
So,
and that notion that is very interesting, because when you're in an environment, especially when you're in school, I feel like there's so much opportunity and potential all around you. I remember when I was in high school, and there was a movie works club in our school, and no one was making any movies.
Yes.
And I was like, but I want to make a movie. And I remember the instructor at the time, well-meaning, basically laughed at me when I said I wanted to make a movie, because he said, well, you don't know anything about movies. Yeah. So I was like, but I want to make one. So I did. It took me 2 weeks, and I came back with a 20-page script, and he told me, well, that's not how TV works. You need a page a minute, basically. So if you want a feature-length film, you're going to need at least 90 minutes of a script. Right. Guess what? 3 months later, came back with 120 pages, and I want to shoot this. Yeah. And never, and I did, and I made a film. My first feature film was in high school, and I roped it around, everyone around me, literally everyone around me that I knew, and my family was incredibly supportive, and it never crossed my mind that I couldn't, even though I had no concept of what a script was. I had no concept of how to tell a story, but there was a willingness and a passion in me and this comfort that comes with the courage of following through with that things do fall into place, and people want to help you.
That's the thing. And this is the thing, people want to be a part of something successful, of something magical, of something unique. And I think if you make the structure for that, make the framework for them, and invite them in, people are willing to help you. People want to be a part of it. I had a very similar experience in my grade school. I was in grade 7, maybe. I was 12 years old, and we had to do this project called the Lawson Project, where you had to write about a great Canadian. And I wrote about Mark and Craig Kielburger, who started Free the Children. And so we had to write a 50-page essay and do a presentation, whatever, this whole thing. People were terrified. And it was a lot. When you're 12 years old, that's a big project. It was a lot. People dreaded this. So we did this Lawson Project, and I wrote about Mark and Craig Kielburger. And Mark and Craig Kielburger started Free the Children when they were 11 years old. They started this incredible charity, and Craig went off to Asia for 6 months when he was 12 by himself without his parents. And he went and met Mother Teresa and was I want to learn about this, and I was so inspired, and I was I want to do that. If they can do it, why can't do it. And I talked to a couple of my friends. I was like, do you guys want to start a charity with me? Yeah, sure, why not? I got together like 3 or 4 of my friends. We decided we were going to start this charity. I was like, okay, what problems did Mark and Craig run into? You know, they weren't educated. They didn't know what they were doing. People didn't take them seriously. So we read all these books. We decided what we wanted to do, what we wanted to achieve. We educated ourselves on the problems in that area, you know, really did all the work. And then we were like, okay, we need to go get donations for our first. We're going to hold a silent auctions. We went out to the mall and knocked on doors and asked for donations. People were like, you're a child. We're not giving you
you're taking all my money. You're so cute.
So we went to our principal and we asked our principal. We said, you know, we started this charity and people think we're just trying to get free stuff. Will you write a letter and tell them that this is real, that we've actually started this charity and we're trying to do this. We're not trying to get free things. And he was like, absolutely. And he wrote us this letter. Our principal, Mr. Bennett, wrote us this letter. And we went door to door, handed out this letter, and then just flooded with stuff. Stuff was showing up to my door every single day. And we started, and that was the beginning of this thing that went on for quite a while. I mean, it's been going on for years now. And I mean, it started so quickly, but it was like when we just invited people and we did the work, you know what I mean? And we showed them, look, Mark and Craig did it. Look what they did. It's possible. And we'll do all the legwork, you know what I mean? Just give us the support that we need. And my parents helped out, the teachers helped out, the schools, like if you need the gym.
You set the tone, right? Yeah. And your personal passion and drive kind of inspired the rest of how the things fell into place, right?
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me always to think about this idea of like you get an impulse sometimes. When that impulse is rooted in something that matters to you personally, it does, you have the energy. I don't think there is such a thing as, you know, I can't do it. People like you and I, and this idea fascinates me. Once I thought of this, I was like, oh, like literally, people like you and I and everyone built this entire world somehow. Yeah. This world doesn't just materialize. Like people had ideas and collaborated and created everything. So why can't we literally do absolutely anything?
Yeah.
And we're not talking about, you didn't do this on your own, right? You didn't you had the initiative and the courage to follow through with an idea, but then inspired so many other moving parts all around you that then created something bigger than you could have ever imagined, right?
Absolutely.
And it's sort of, it sort of showed you that anything's possible at any time.
Yes.
And that all you need is what? Willingness.
A little bit of initiative, a little bit of willingness, a little bit of drive, and the rest all will fall into place. And it really did show me that people were I was shocked by how willing people were to help. I was like, I'm 12 years old. I'm asking for the world right now. I'm like, I'm going to change the world, guys. Want to help? And everyone was like, yeah, totally. What do you need? You need my house? You need the gym? You need whatever? Like, people were so willing to jump on board and help. And I was just shocked. Yeah. And it took on a life of its own. But it was like such an eye-opening experience for me. That's like, really all you need to do is ask and say, how can we make this happen? You know, this is where I want to get to. How do we get there? How can we make that happen? You know, and there's always a way to make it happen, and it will. You just have to start the ball rolling, and you need to show the initiative.
For you personally, do you think it matters ever when you show the initiative? Like if it's not at 12 years old, if it's at 25, if it's at 30, if it's at 50, does it matter necessarily when you show the initiative? Do things really do work out all the time?
Yeah.
Is there a way?
I don't think
I believe it, but
I really don't think. I mean, look, you read so many stories of like whoever got their first acting role at 50 years old or whatever. Like, it doesn't matter. I think if something is striking you at that age to have that initiative, it's because that's when it's speaking to you, and that's when you're ready to give yourself over to it, right? And it's like, there are some things that will strike you and it'll pass and you'll come to something different in your life later, and that's fine. But I think if something is speaking to you, you have to listen to it. And it doesn't matter if you think you're too late or whatever. You know, I told you stories about when I started back in ballet. I quit ballet when I was really little. I started back and I was like, oh, it's too late. In the ballet world, you just start so young. And it's never too late. There's never a too late. If that's something that you really believe in and are willing to work for, there's no such thing, I don't think. Really.
Yeah. Is that being taught in school? Is this mentality of there's always a way.
I don't think this is being taught in most schools, honestly. And I think it's very important. I think that time management, attitude management, just how to deal with problems in the world and how to figure out what you want to do with your life and how to get there, like that's not being taught in schools, frankly, which I think is a big problem. I do think for me it was a combination of both. I had a very unique schooling experience. Mine is not typical at all. So I do think mine's accredited a bit to that. But I was that way a bit before, you know. I mean, I was always a bit of like the weird kid, the outsider, you know, even before I went to Pearson, which was this school for the arts I went to in grade 4. I had gone to 2 other elementary schools before that because I just was like, this isn't right for me. And I did what I had to do, and I moved schools and I did whatever. And then when I got to Pearson was an extraordinarily different environment. From the time you were in grade 4, there was so much independence. They treated you like adults. There was this set expectation of just like, well, things are getting done. At other schools, it was always like...
There was a standard, a higher standard that was being set in many ways.
Yes, in other schools, it was always like, well, what if I don't hand in this assignment on time? It's like, well, then you lose 5%, whatever. At Pearson, it was like, what if I don't hand this in? They're like, I don't understand the question. You're handing it in. Like, that's just it. There was no, like, if you don't, like, it was like, you're handing it in Monday at 9 a.m. Like, that's it. There was no ifs, ands, buts about anything, and it was just a higher standard set. And they, like, I mean, we had a wood shop. Like, we were using power tools when we were 9 years old, building sets, like, doing all these things. And there was a lot more independence. There was a lot more, you were in control of your own education a lot more, because since it was a school for the arts, everything was integrated. So, you know, French class, math, whatever, it was like, okay, you're in French, you have to demonstrate this understanding of vocabulary, but do it by, like, writing a film and shooting it. So you'd go off by yourself and you'd write a script in French and shoot it and, like, be on the playground. It was a lot more...
So they never assumed that even at 9
that
years old, you couldn't. Yeah,
there was no assumption that, like, oh, they're too young, they're too stupid, they won't be able to do this, they're not in control. Like, you were much more in control of your own education, and there was always the assumption that you can and you will, and why wouldn't you? And that also, like, that we would go above and beyond if we were given the opportunity to. So why set the bar here? Because if you set the bar, then you'll only go to here. But if you don't set a roof, then maybe we'll go here, you know? So it was always, like, much looser parameters at Pearson, which was a very unique experience, which was why grade 9 for me was very hard when I went to a normal school, because I was like, why are you treating me like a child? I didn't understand why. I was like, why do I have to ask her to go to the bathroom? Like, why don't you trust me? What's going on? I didn't understand, because I'd had this wonderful experience for 5 years where I was treated with so much respect, and there's this mutual respect, and then I got to grade 9 and I was like, I don't understand what's happening. Like, why are you treating me like I don't understand anything? Why is this like it felt like prison. And then I was like, I can't do this. I have to go to a school for the arts. I have to be somewhere where there's more freedom and understanding of the way that my mind works. And I did. I left and I went to Toronto.
That's amazing.
But so I do credit a lot of that to the experience I had at Pearson. Yeah. But I think I was always that way before. I think, you know, my parents always taught me to ask questions. I got in trouble with teachers a lot because they'd be like, do this. And I would always be like, well, why? And they'd be like, because I told you to. I'm like, that's not really an answer. And I got in trouble a lot because I was like, well, I want to understand why I'm learning this. I want to understand what's going on. Like, why do I have to learn my timetables? Why do I have to, you know what I mean? Like, and you're taught to just obey. And my parents were like, we don't want to teach you to blindly obey, you know? Always, you know, if you feel it's justified, great, do it. But you shouldn't just listen to someone because they're older or they're in charge.
To clarify and to give a bit of context, you guys, some of you, we are both lucky in a way to be having these conversations on a daily basis because of what we do.
Yeah.
But in many ways, I grew up in Romania, very different experience. You know, I didn't go to school for the arts and yet have a very similar passion and a very different route to how this happened. We are by no means, we're talking about education in the context of its value.
Yeah.
You know, throughout this entire conversation, right? So whether or not you have this kind of amazing school experience, you know, early on, or whether you literally grow up in a totally different part of the world and it's totally different, the value of what you're learning and the value of starting to think of how to learn, and what the components of that are,
and how you process the information that's being given to you, and the environment that you're in, and how you can take advantage of that.
Is very important in a way, right? So what I very much love hearing you speak of is this journey that you had that made you strong in who you are and incredibly aware of who you are and what you're connected to, and your higher purpose, you know.
Yeah.
And in many ways, I'll venture to say that you ended up at Pearson because of that calling, you know, because you were grounded in the sense of what you wanted, and that was the next natural progression. But there's such education in itself is paramount. Like, no matter where you get it from, there's value in all of it.
Yeah.
Now, to understand the kinds of ways that we can interact with each other to evolve to our most productive selves, you know, those are the kinds of conversations that I'm interested in having.
Definitely.
And there's definite things that we can take, no matter where we are in the world, into our lives from this. So, freedom of exploration is what I took from your personal experience. And the other thing is just this notion of you can do anything. Taking you seriously, that no matter what age you're at, you can do anything and do it.
And not living
Go for
in fear. I think there's so much fear of, well, if I, you know, don't have extracurriculars or whatever, I won't get into a good university. Like, there's this fear, there's this pressure that's instilled in us through the education system, through whatever, and it's like...
And it's well-meaning, right?
And
because you need to have a foundation for things to take out away from school.
But you can never function through fear, ever. And you need to always have faith in yourself that, like, you will be able to rise to the challenge, you know what I mean? And you have to trust that, like, whatever decisions you're making that you think are best for you, that they're best for you. And if they turn out that, like, you need something different, you'll be able to figure it out. You know, I decided in grade 12 that I wasn't going to be in school anymore. And I left school in grade 12. And then when I ended up going to a summer program for a university, and they offered me a scholarship to come to the university for the next semester.
Yeah, girl.
And I was like, yeah, sure, great. And I was 6 credits short of, like, the necessary required credits to come. And I was like, yeah, I'll be there. And I went to my dad's high school, and I had to get 6 credits in one semester. And then while I was in LA that summer, they offered me a play. And I was like, yeah. And I did this play in LA, which meant that I now was cutting a month off of my already shortened semester, and I was supposed to start at university in January. So now I had October, November, December, 3 months to do 6 credits. And I was just like, it's fine. Like, I'll figure it out. And my dad was
There's
like...
always a way.
Yeah, my dad was like, okay, you think this play's important? I was like, yeah. He's like, cool, I support you. Great, go do it. So I did this play. I came to school in October, and I did 4 credits at the high school, and I did 2 online, and I got 6 credits in 3 months, and I went to university in January, and it was fine. Like, I figured it out, and there was never any fear in me of, like, oh my god, what am I doing? I can't do this. I'm not going to be able to go. Like, it was like, yeah, I'll get it done. Of course I'll get it done. And I think you have to have faith in yourself that, like, you will always be able to meet whatever challenge. And
how do you do that? In a way to be helpful, because I have certain things that I'm incredibly connected to, so I'll go for. But is there any way to alleviate? I personally think that you'll always be fearful at some point or another.
Right.
There's always going to be, like, a certain amount of trepidation of, can I do it, can I not?
Of course.
But
I think it's
go.
Yeah, I think it's a process that you have to actively work on through your life, honestly. I think you need to set through your life, set deadlines for yourself, and deadlines that are a little uncomfortable, and work towards them and challenge yourself, and then when you get it done, be like, wow, that was something I think I couldn't get done. And I think it's hard in our education system. You know, I understand so many people deal with anxiety and stuff right now, and my dad is a teacher. He teaches at-risk kids, and it's hard. You know, so many people deal with anxiety, and it's like, to help with that, teachers let them not do presentations in front of classes and not do it. It's like, I think that's really damaging, because all you're teaching them is that they can't. I think you need to learn that you can, and even though you're scared and it might
So that's the starting point. Literally understanding and having that belief in the thought. Starting with the thought of you can.
And even if it isn't amazing, and even if it isn't the greatest presentation in the world, like, you can. Even if you're scared and it sucks, like, you can do it. I remember, I'm terrified of singing in public. And I remember my first day of university, we had to get up and we had to prepare this song for our vocal class. We had to get up and sing in front of everybody this song. And, like, you didn't know anybody. I was terrified. I got up. I was literally sobbing in front of a room full of strangers that I now was about to spend however many years with. I'm crying in hysterics. And my vocal teacher...
Sorry, that's not fun.
I was like, just like pure anxiety. And my vocal teacher just looks at me. He sits there. He stares at me, like, no compassion on his face whatsoever. Just looks at me. He's like, are you done now? Can we get started? And I was like, And I just, I was like crying through the whole thing, but I just did it. I just sang. And it wasn't good, but I just did it. I just had to tell myself, like, it doesn't matter. I can. And the first step is just doing it. And maybe it's going to be at this level when you start, but then next time it'll be here, next time it'll be here, next time it'll be here. And it's working through that.
And it is a growing process. You're never just amazing right off the top, right? Everyone has a starting point, and then it gets better and better, just like with practice.
So whether it's anxiety or time management or whatever, you have to just set those goals for yourself and give yourself deadlines and give yourself things and hold yourself accountable and make other people hold you accountable and just do it and start and
believe that there's always a way, right?
Yeah.
You starting with that premise, that's the best way to alleviate anxiety. Literally tell yourself, right before you do anything, you have a notion, you can sense the fear bubbling up in front of you, and what's the first thought? Instead of indulging in that fear, you go, there's always a way. I can do it. I can do it. And then show yourself.
And always keep in mind, this was something my parents always taught me, always keep in mind where you want to be. What's your end goal? What are you doing this for? Like, if you're just doing things to do them, if it terrifies you, of course you're not going to want to do it because you're not doing it for anything. But if you're like, I really want to be a doctor, I really want to save lives, then you know what, this course might suck and writing exams might give you anxiety, but like, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to save lives, you have something you're working towards. There's that light at the end of the tunnel that inspires you every day and helps you work towards it. So for me, it was like when I was having a hard time in school and I was being bullied and I was doing all these things that didn't appeal to me and I didn't like it, my parents were like, Sydney, you know what you want, you know what you're working towards, keep that in mind. Like, it's fine, all this is just stuff you gotta do it to get out of the way, so do it to get where you want to be. And you have to have that for yourself, have that light of what inspires you and what you're working towards. And then all those things that seem hard and are treacherous at first, it serves a purpose to you getting where you want to be and to have what you deserve. And I think that really helps you conquer those steps in the ladder there.
How do you feel about competition? In terms of, have you felt, were there moments during school where you felt, because you were a competitive dancer, you've done a lot, you've dealt with competition on many different levels. How do you handle those? What's the best balance to handle those kinds of pressures?
I have very mixed feelings about competition. Like at my ballet school that I went to, she really did not believe in competition. She thought it did not, and it was a very strict ballet school, don't get me wrong, like it was harsh, but she thought the competitive dance world was just horrible for your spirit and that you should be doing this because you love it and working towards your own personal growth and you should be competing with yourself, and why are we turning,
And it's not even a competition at that point, it's skill, it's perfecting, it's mastery,
it's growing and being inspired by yourself. And I think competition maybe, I believe in always, looking at others who've succeeded and always being inspired by that and growing on that and trying to match that and grow on that. But I think competition is maybe the wrong word. Isaac Newton was like, he said this famous quote, if I have seen further, it's only by standing on the shoulders of giants. And I think,
love that.
Yeah, and I think you should look at those people who have succeeded and try and say, how did they get there? And stand on their shoulders and be elevated by them. But I think
instead of being intimidated by them, elevated by them,
be elevated and see what they did and learn from each other. And I think that that's the best way to go about it. But I think competition where it's one person's a winner and one person's a loser is never healthy. I think, my dad always taught me, like, if you're in a intellectual debate with someone or whatever, it's you either win or you learn. You're either right or you learn something and you're like, wow, I never thought of it that way. That's so great. But I think this notion of a winner and a loser that is bred from competition in the sense that we think of it, like colloquially. I don't think it's productive in any real sense.
Now, it is very natural for us, right? We have little lizard brains, and that survival instinct has always been instilled in us, and I think will always be a part of us. So to deny the fact that, you know, we have a competitive spirit is probably detrimental in the long run.
Right. I think it's just adapting the way we view it and making it productive and healthy for ourselves instead of letting it cripple us. I think when I was young, I did have that, where it was like, you know, if I'm not the best at it, then what's the point? I don't want to do it. I was so bent on being the best at things because I had that competitive spirit in me, and I think that was like super detrimental to me because I didn't work at things or explore things that could have been wonderful for me because I was so
interested in being perfect at it.
Yeah.
There's this, I think that what we miss in many ways, and this is a developmental thing that I even realized once I had more experiences in life, but we miss the pleasure of just learning for the sake of learning and in getting to it, that growth process, because it is a process. No one is perfect right off the bat, but when you hit your face against the competitive spirit in an environment that makes you feel like you need to be perfect and at a certain level, if there's no balance in how you perceive that kind of competition, if all you do is hold yourself to a standard that is almost impossible to attain, your experience of the growth process is going to be so much more painful, and also you don't learn as much as you could if you really truly understand that every single person is growing and learning as you are growing and learning. And there is no perfection ever. That is just, and it's tough, right? Even as a ballerina, like I'm looking at you because I'm like, I know, because it's so difficult
to accept that.
And to me, even, like, I am a perfectionist in many ways in what I do because I love it, but there's a very important need to let go of that idea that you have in your head and actually be focused on what is physically happening in the moment.
And it's funny because my ballet teacher, I'm gonna screw this quote up because I don't know. But my ballet teacher always had this quote on the wall, and she used to read it to us all the time, that Martha Graham said about basically, like, as an artist, that there's no perfection, there's no satisfaction as an artist whatsoever in your work, but it's not your job to judge it.
The process is a satisfaction. I think there's immense satisfaction in what we're doing.
But you have this life force in you that no one else will ever be able to reproduce because you're unique, and that your job is to just let it flow uninterrupted and let it live in the world, because otherwise, if you stop it, like, the world will never have it, and what a loss. And she always, it's much more elegant than that, but she always used to read this quote to us, and because I think in a lot of environments like that where there is this bred competitiveness, we let that get inside our head and stop us from just allowing and creating.
Now, what I think, it's interesting, because I was, especially being Romanian, education is very important, and I remember my parents grew up during the communist era, and they would rank you, like you would take tests, and there would be a tremendous amount of pressure on people to perform really well, and then you would be placed in jobs around the country based on the ranking that you received from your grades and yada yada. So I was very lucky that my parents, that's how they met, and then they experienced a lot more. I didn't experience any of that. I literally, I was born after the communist era, or just as the transition was happening. But it's fascinating to me, and I grew up listening to those stories of people feeling that tremendous pressure. There would be, sadly, people that would commit suicide under that kind of pressure, and would feel like their lives had a ceiling because it kind of did, right? I mean, if you didn't perform a certain way.
Absolutely.
Now, that's an extreme story that I lived in as a kid, but even today in our society, wherever you are around the world, whether you're in Europe, whether you're in North America, grades matter, and you get into Harvard, you get into Stanford, you get into Yale, whatever, based on certain performance markers. And I think those markers are important, don't get me wrong, but the perspective, I think the healthy perspective is not to place so much importance and power on those markers.
And I think it's also hard if you are part of a family, right? If you have siblings, I think that inherent competition between siblings can be so detrimental. Like, I have two older brothers who are both absolutely brilliant. I mean, they're geniuses, and it was always like, oh, you're the artsy one. You're the one who's not smart. How's that feel? Are your parents okay with that? Like, it was always this thing that was like, oh, you have these two brilliant brothers, and you're like, I'm like, actually, I decided to go into this. I love this. Like, you know, like, I don't know why this is
and
such
you're brilliant in a very different way. You are. Yes.
And it's like, you know what? I was very academic as a kid. I love that too. I read books. Like, it's not one or the other.
No, it is not.
But we get to choose where we put our energy, and I don't know why we put value on it in different. It's such different value. But I think you have to, for yourself, let go of that. Like, I had to let go of this. I know people are always gonna try and put that on me when they meet me and meet my family and meet my brothers or hear about my brothers, and I had to, for myself, let go of that and just find it funny now. You know what I mean? You can't let that get to you. And well, I think it's the same. We all have to support each other and hold each other up and not have this comparison.
Absolutely. And the truth is, again, what you're personally interested in, this is why I genuinely hope that people can look beyond that and find within themselves what their personal passions are. And nothing makes me happier than seeing someone that's actually truly vibrant and excited about a certain subject.
The world needs
follows
it all.
Through. Absolutely, because the diversity is what really is what we all learn from.
Yes.
It's the pathway to our growth, right? And so who's to say that someone that has an IQ of, I don't even know, 160, whatever, who cares, is more valuable or more valued in life than someone who doesn't, or is doing is going in a totally different direction and adds, a very different kind of value in their own way.
Yeah.
We all kind of need each other to sort of co-create, because that's all we're doing in different ways. So it fascinates me. What I think is really valuable is for us to all understand that, yes, these markers exist in life. Yes, you are meant to hit certain standards, hit certain bars as you go through life. And whether you're a lawyer, whether you're a doctor, there are certain standards that you're going to be asked to meet at every level and every step of the way. But that's not the whole story. That's not the be-all and end-all of who you are as a human being.
Hostage,
and don't hold yourself hostage to that, because I think what was so incredibly liberating for me to realize in life, and it just sort of helped me tremendously to be less anxious, to be more grounded in my work and be more focused in my work, and also through that be better at what I do.
Absolutely. And it's like, even though there's these road markers, if one person hits that road marker at 20 and you hit it at 40, that doesn't mean that you're less valuable or you're whatever. Like, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? I think we really
their
need
journey.
That in perspective. None of that has any effect on your value or your journey or what you're going to accomplish in your life. It doesn't matter.
Oh, you know what's amazing? I honestly think that Sydney and I have had very different journeys into this. But in many ways, it feels like I've known this girl for years. And I love everything she says. And and how wonderful that life, and I want you to take great comfort in this, no matter who you are and what you want to do, life will bring you like-minded people to play with. No matter where you are, no matter what level you're at. This is why that pressure and that anxiety, my heart breaks when I see someone who is really struggling through that process. Because, trust me when I say this, life brings you wonderful people that are on your level, that inspire you, that you can collaborate with and understand from and co-create with in whatever field you're in. So don't ever feel like you're alone, because you're not.
Yeah. And you need to be open to that. And I think the other thing is you need to not settle for anything less. There may be periods where perhaps you feel isolated or you feel alone, but I think don't change yourself to fit in with the herd or whatever because you're like lonely. You have to stay true to who you are and know that the people who are of your heart and are going to add value to your life and to your journey, they'll be there at the right time.
They'll come. There's always a way. Because you know why? Because the universe is always looking out for us, right? When we're connected to that, that's when we're most powerful. When we understand and we actually truly believe that we are enough. There is value in every single one of us, no matter how diverse we are, and that things work out. And the energy that you put out there,
attract it right back. Yeah, so you can't be negative and think like it's not going to work out, I'm going to be alone. Then that's what you're going to attract. That's what you're going to speak into existence, breathe into existence. You have to trust and know that like you're going to be okay. You're going to make it work out. And of course, there's a way. And of course, you're going to get there. And it's all in due time. And then things will start to work out. You have to be patient with yourself and with the world around you and with the people in your life, and have a little more understanding.
And enjoy the process.
Yeah.
Every step along the way.
Yeah.
Girl, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
For being here. I love you.